I think it was 1 or 2 days before Trump's term was over, then Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, war criminal, horrible human being that he is, designated the Houthis or Ansar Allah as a terrorist organization. And this article details how that designation, designating the Houthis as a terrorist organization by the U.S. State Department, has actually backfired. This is from Ahmed Abdul Karim. Apologize if I didn't pronounce that right. Blowback. Trump sanctions on Yemen are already backfiring, which is good. That's awesome. And, sanctions are a crime against humanity, frankly. We thought that Hajia, Yemen, near the Saudi border, we thought that the aid from the U.S. would feed our children, not the American sanctions would see them dying from hunger. Yemeni father who wished only to be called AJ from the border city of Abs near Saudi Arabia told Mint Press. The only income J.A. has to feed his family, to feed the 20 family members under his care, is the money transfer that comes at the end of every month. He receives 500 Saudi riyals from his expatriate son in Saudi Arabia who works in a laundromat. That money, though, will no longer be able to make it to Yemen as exchange companies are canceling foreign remittances to the country amid sanctions imposed by the outgoing Trump admin. Either we die by U.S. bomb or U.S. sanctions. It is the same. Is this the America that everyone dreams of? There's no wonder why the United States, the U.S. government, is the most hated and vilified government or group in the world. It's because of things like this, supporting the Saudi-led genocide in Yemen, giving billions in arms sales to Saudi Arabia, these disgusting sanctions, which are collective punishment and war crimes. The last-minute decision by the former Trump administration to designate Ansar Allah as a foreign terrorist organization has sparked concern from the thousands of Yemeni families that depend on remittances sent home from relatives working abroad, which represent millions of dollars annually. According to JA, the repercussions of the designation have already started to harm his family, who is powerless as money exchanges and banks in the Saudi city where his son works have refused to transfer money to Yemen, arguing that Abs is under the control of the Houthis, Ansar Allah. Sources in Sana'a, including Houthi officials, charities, banks, and exchange shops, told Mint Press that international banks, exchange shops, and firms have already ceased participating in commercial or financial transactions with Yemenis, including those exempted for humanitarian transactions due to the fear of triggering U.S. sanctions. I mean, oh God, just another example of how disgustingly horrible Mike Pompeo is. And Anthony Blinken is no saint in his own right, Trump's Secretary of State, but Mike Pompeo, like, he's up there with, Kissinger level type pieces of shit, Secretaries of State, and the U.S. has had a lot of bad ones, obviously. Despite being a staunch opponent of Ansar Allah, J.A. took to the street on the highway road linking Hodeidah and Haja to protest against the sanctions. There, thousands of residents, including Ansar Allah supporters, sympathizers, as well as those at odds with the group, carried banners reading, "America is the mother of terrorism." Yes, completely. The United States is the biggest terrorist organization in the world. Completely agree with these people protesting against the disgusting, despicable American empire. Protesters shouted, "Who is killing the Yemeni people?" while others retorted, "America." I mean, Jesus Christ. They're not wrong, and the U.S. empire, the military-industrial complex, things like this make me, frankly, ashamed to be a citizen of the United States. That's why it's important to call out this bullshit and call out politicians when they allow things like this to happen, and try to organize against these type of things, obviously. Like the residents in the border city of Abs, hundreds of thousands of Yemenis took to the streets in 17 major cities, including Sana'a, Hodeidah, Haja, and other cities, to show support for Ansar Allah and reject the designation of the movement as terrorists. They control 80% of fucking Yemen. I mean, God, the it's the government, okay? Ansar Allah, the Houthis, that is the government in Yemen right now, and designating them as a terrorist organization. Again, it's already having blowback. It's galvanizing support, more support against the U.S. regime, which I would assume was already huge because of our support for Saudi Arabia and the genocide they're perpetrating and perpetuating and continuing to perpetuate against the Yemeni people. It's disgusting. They call on President Biden to end support to the Saudi-led coalition and reverse the decision they say punishes a nation reeling from war and blockade imposed by Washington's allies in the region. Protests drew crowds from all across all parties and workers, including engineers, farmers, and civil defense. Doctors and aid workers wore their uniforms and marched side by side with money changers, business owners, civil society orgs, and local relief organizations. Most religious groups in Yemen, including Shafis, Zaydis, and others, as well as most major national parties, were also among. So a very broad-based coalition calling out these continued disgusting actions by the U.S. empire towards Yemen. In Yemen's capital city of Sana'a, hundreds of thousands gathered at Bab al-Yemen carrying Yemeni flags and holding banners, while others gathered in front of the shuttered U.S. embassy, raising their fists up as they chanted slogans against former U.S. President Donald Trump. Some tore American flags, while others trampled on them with their feet. Wow, look, I mean, that's the big show of people. And, it'd be really interesting to see what some of the signs said. And Hudida Mohammed Ali al-Houthi was the keynote speaker at a rally where he delivered a sermon to hundreds of thousands of protesters. We are not afraid of Americans, and our nation is standing firmly in the face of threats and aggression, he said. Al-Houthi called on Biden to impose an embargo on sending weapons, warplanes, and logistical support to Saudi Arabia and its allies instead of designation a political movement fighting against a foreign invasion as terrorists. Yes, exactly. Like, how would people in the U.S. want to or like to respond if the situation was reversed? If we had this foreign invading power coming in to the U.S., committing these war crimes, committing this genocide, we'd be rightfully super, super angry, pissed off, and would use any means necessary to try to expel that occupying force. The Biden admin, for its part, recently suspended arms sales to both Saudi Arabia and UAE and rolled back some sanctions on the Houthis, but did not remove the terrorist designation imposed by the Trump administration, which, like, the Houthis, Ansar Allah, however you'd like to refer to them, that's the main fucking government in Yemen. They control 80% of the country and the capital and this big port city. I mean, Jesus Christ, it's disgusting. Yemenis at home were not demonstrating alone. Dozens of rallies were held by Yemeni expatriates and foreign activists in cities like D.C., San Francisco, Hamilton, Canada, Britain, Australia, Italy, and other countries. A virtual demonstration was also held by more than 250 orgs around the world. All called for an end to the war and a lifting of the blockade and the cancellation of U.S. sanctions. To many of the protesters who spoke to Mint Press, the designation exposes Washington as a belligerent actor that has knowingly harmed them for the past 6 years under the pretext of fighting Iranian influence and returning the ousted President Hadi to power, arguments that have been repeated by the Houthis since 2015 when the war began. And again, to my knowledge, Iran's not even providing any material support to the Houthis. They are just more or less kind of ideologically aligned, and it's kind of within, it's better for Iran's strategic interests for the Houthis to be in power. And even if there were, who fucking gives a shit? The United States does not need to be meddling in the business of countries in the Middle East or anywhere around the fucking world. Defund the military-industrial complex and abolish the U.S. empire. 17 countries. Blowback. Major General Khalid Barras, the head of the Southern Movement. Again, the Houthis are, I believe, mainly in the north of the country, so this would be kind of the, opposition figure, if you will. One of the many groups that participated in national dialogue held in 2014 said in the wake of the massive demonstration that U.S. decision lacks logic when tens of millions of defenders of their homeland are accused of terrorism. Answer Allah are not terrorists. We as Southerners reject this designation. The former American admin accused millions of Yemenis of terrorism, and with them, tens of millions of supporters and defenders of the homeland. This is ridiculous. Maybe I'm confused about the Southern movement. And then, so Biden has lifted some sanctions, but not that terrorist designation, which is problematic in my opinion. Get rid of that. It's ridiculous. Yemeni Southern Movement. Let's see. Southern Movement. I'm gonna move this. Demanding secession from the Republic in Yemen, South Yemen. Okay. Yeah, so not affiliated with the Houthis, it looks like. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section down below. Experts warn that U.S. designation could not only sabotage the peace in the war-torn country, but could seriously imperil the U.S. diplomatic credibility and its prospects. How does the U.S. have any credibility on any level, whether it be domestic or foreign policy wise? Jesus Christ. Regardless of the wide popularity of Ansar Allah among Yemenis, reflected by the large demonstrations which took place on January 25th due to their outsized role in resistance against the Saudi war, almost 80% of Yemenis live in areas under Houthi control, including the country's capital, Sanaa, and the major port of Al Hodeida. And at least 80% of the population, 24.1 million, require humanitarian assistance, more than half of them facing starvation. Consequently, U.S. sanctions will inevitably push more Yemeni civilians closer to famine. Again, if the U.S. was really concerned with the health and well-being of people in Yemen, they wouldn't be imposing sanctions. They wouldn't be arming countries like Saudi Arabia and UAE to the tunes of billions of dollars in weapons contracts. They would be giving as much humanitarian aid as is needed for the populace there. And again, that's not what they're doing. So it's obviously not, they're not concerned with that. I need water. Spring water for sure. Officials in Sana'a who spoke to Mint Press remained defiant and said the sanctions will not affect them. They argue they already have elements operating in other capitals like Tehran, and Muscat, and that designation will only increase their popularity internally, which definitely seems like what's happening. It's galvanizing all of these disparate groups in their hatred and opposition to the United States, which is a completely rational response to be targeted and oppressed so long by the U.S. empire, and equate them to other countries facing U.S. aggression, such as China and Russia. Good for them. Make as many alliances as you need to help out your citizens, the people in your country that are, again, facing genocide from the Saudis, and just it's the world's greatest humanitarian crisis, and a big part of it is because of the U.S. foreign policy towards Yemen, and it's disgusting, and it needs to be called out for what it is. War crimes and unchecked aggression by the U.S. empire, time and time again. We see it all over the globe. It's disgusting. Share your thoughts down below. Like the video if you like the damn video. Subscribe for more content. Peace. Much love. All part of the people.